Hello, dear friends. This is Kardec Radio at 11 p.m. Nourishing our souls together. Yes, here we are. We're in this beautiful moment, enjoying an opportunity to share the teachings of Jesus in the book, Jesus in the Home. Welcome, dear friends. In this Chapter 48, The Common Good, we are going to learn more with the Master. It's so interesting because when the title proposes the common good, it makes us think about the good that is good for us and good for everybody else. Right? We're still living a selfish time on earth when people dream of the good for them. And if that good matches with others, great. If not, many people say, who cares, right? It's selfishness. No wonder in the Spirit's book by Allan Kardec, we learn that selfishness and pride are the most difficult defects of the soul. From them, everything else derives. So we need to be very careful and try to find the common good. So our chapter today begins with an assessment question. How often do you recognize the common good? How often? How often do you think of the common good in your daily life? We're not talking about that one day during the week or in a month when we think of the common good. What is it that is good for you that may be good for others, and vice versa? It begins in a family. What is the common good? Harmony, respect, validation of feelings, right? So when we talk about the common good at work, what is the common good at work? People may say, money, promotion. No. Even if you have the best salary, that doesn't give you happiness. Studies have already showed it to everybody. What brings happiness is when we recognize each other's efforts, when we recognize the values of one another, when we respect people's differences and yet value the differences. And what is the common good when we are driving our car, respecting each person's rights, right? Justice, right? So this is just a few, it's a brainstorm, so we can prepare ourselves to receive the lesson from the Master today. Okay? So let me begin. Let us begin the reading. Chapter 48, The Common Good. In the midst of a crystal clear night, the disciples were gathered in Peter's house, discussing the difficulties involved in spreading redemptive ideas. Is it hard to share ideas that change the course of the event of our lives? Of course it is. And they were discussing. But it's interesting when our dear Neio Lucio describes the scenario, a crystal clear night. Let's keep that information and see if we can come back to it later, matching the text and the information we're receiving. Okay? A lot of people were taking advantage of Jesus' help, seeking personal gain. One particular merchant was encouraging people to assemble in a certain area of the shore in order to increase the sale of his wines. Common wagon drivers were intensifying the advertising of the heavenly kingdom in the surrounding areas, not with the goal of growing spiritually, but in order to rent various vehicles to visiting patients who were seeking the Master's aid. The opinion of nearly all of the apostles was one of alarm and discouragement. Are you alarmed? Don't be, because it happens to date. It happened with John of God, though he's not a spiritist. How many people made money out of it? And we also know of, even in the spiritist circles, any religious pathway, many people entering for personal gain. That's why at the Spirit Side of Virginia we have a policy. No exchange of business cards. We're not allowed to make money out of our community. No. People cannot go to the Spiritist Center with the intention of finding business relationships. Of course, we cannot, we don't have the capacity to micromanage and go there, and it's in people's conscience, but the good spirits tell us, and we suspend the works of everybody who tries to do this. We can't. Why? Because it's sacred. We cannot take advantage of this. He says, seeking personal gain. People who were there to increase the sale of their wines, rent, etc. And there are people, even in Spiritism, I know in other centers around the world, who justify it. There are many churches around the world who encourage people to come and do these business transactions because they want to keep the followers within it. But we can't use that sacred space for this. We shouldn't, even in our family meetings. I know people who in family reunions, they try to sell the products to one another. One thing is to benefit the person, another is to benefit yourself. But Vanessa, what about win-win situation? But how does it feel when people approach you with that hidden agenda? Does it feel good? Like at Kardec Radio or the Spiritist magazine, we do not allow any business exchange. Why? Because businesses can donate their resources and services to benefit, but they cannot absorb clientele. So let us think about this, okay? Yes, Jailton, you're right. It reminds me, he's saying, of the story of the money changers at the temple in Jerusalem. Agreed. And how did Jesus react? So let us see how he is going to address this issue, right? Let us see. Then, that was when the divine friend began to speak. Jesus said, there was once a philosopher who immersed himself in the studies of the divine revelation. He had a disciple who was never happy with people's incomprehension with regards to the heavenly truths. He was always getting angry at the evildoers, the ingrates or the hypocrites who were misusing his elevated teachings. His master listened to him in silence until one fine morning there was a sudden summer downpour. The master invited him to go on a short stroll to the neighboring field after the countryside had recovered from the rain. They hadn't even walked half a mile when they caught sight of a wide strip of swampland, and noticing that the quagmire was receiving the rainwater, the teacher explained. Thus, the mud hole receives the heavenly liquid and turns it into a dirty broth. But there are frogs and toads that will safely and effectively benefit from it. If it didn't rain, these dark waters would probably become toxic. After a few more steps, they found full puddles in the recesses of hardened earth. The teacher studied them and added, "Here, the gushing fount from the sky is now unpleasant mud. But what would become of this sterile ground if the divine water didn't visit it? Tomorrow we might see in the soil a flowering display of fragrant wild lilies." They proceeded further and stopped to examine some bare trees. The water on the dried out branches appeared to be gray and fetid, but the teacher explained. The blessing of the crystal rain came down heavily and somberly on these forsaken trees. But what would happen to them if the gifts from heaven didn't benefit them at all? Perhaps in no time at all, they would die down to their roots. A few weeks from now, however, they'll be covered with lush branches, acting as blessed homes for the birds. They continued on and came up some peach trees whose blossoms held the drops from the sky with such beauty that within them they looked more like diamond-like dew, slightly iridescent in the bright sunlight. The master pointed at them and said, "Here, the pure petals that retain the heavenly gift with absolute faithfulness, and soon they will become fragrant and beautiful with excellent fruit for the banquet of life." Immediately afterwards, casting his eyes over the extensive landscape, the master said to the amazed disciple, "Never criticize the fountainhead of heavenly aid. Each person receives a measure of it on the plane on which they live. In harboring its sublime principles, the criminal becomes less cruel. The worst appears less bad. The imperfect improves. The unfortunate person finds relief, and the good ones improve to better carry out the service of our Father. If you possess enough understanding to discern reality, don't waste time on empty rebuke. Learn from the Supreme Lord, who constantly helps in accordance with each person's spiritual standing and need. Distribute to all those around you the gifts of heaven that you have already faithfully retained, and heaven will open up endless treasure to you." Having finished the story, Jesus fell silent. As if they had received a sublime lesson in such few words, the disciples, silent and happy, looked at one another expressively. Then the Lord blessed them and left for the banks of the lake, gazing pensively at the stars glimmering in the distance. Wow! What do you think about it? So Jesus is saying, remember a lesson that we studied a while ago? Let's mind our business. Meaning, what can we do about people who go to a church and try to make money of the people that are there? We can't do anything, right? We can only reach those who are nearby. In the case of the disciples, they were said, don't worry about them. you can't stop them, right? Can you stop people, in this case, from making money in the pathway, bringing people to see Jesus? I mean, you can't. You can't control people. Can't control people. Chico Xavier knew of people who many times he talked to people who were trying to make money out of getting people to see him. He never agreed. But how much can you control these people? They will always find a way, but that's between them and God. On us, we shouldn't be concerned. Nowadays, I know there are people who study frauds in mediumship, etc. And one day, somebody said, Vanessa, we should tell everybody about the mediums who are not being good mediums. I said, as far as I know, I'm not the law enforcement. No, that's not my task. Not to let people know who is doing this, but we're here just to share the good news. We're not the police in Spiritism, right? So Jesus is saying, don't be the police. Telling the disciples, aren't you relieved, friends, that you and I don't need to control anybody? That's why Jesus said, if you follow me, it's going to be easy, light. It's going to be a joy because I don't need to control anybody. All I need to do is to focus on my part. I think it's a big relief, but that can be extended to our daily lives regarding our family members, regarding our friends, regarding our colleagues at work, our neighbors, everyone. Do you know one thing that Mentor Joseph keeps reminding me? He says, Vanessa, remember that each person not only is a child of God, but also has spirit guides who care for them. So trust in the protecting spirits that are guiding their lives. Then I no longer need to control or be worried about anything. Think about this. Does it make sense? I think it does. It makes sense. What do you feel? When you get to know that you don't need to be worried about how people are making their choices, unless they are your children and they're still under 21, right? And then, of course, we have to intervene. Or if you are the boss of a company, you have to, fulfill your job duties. That may be one of them, not controlling, but managing. But above everything, Jesus is saying, manage yourself. Take care of your administration, yourself. Right? That's why he says, in a way, never criticize the fountainhead of heavenly aid. Meaning, you can't blame Chico Xavier for the people who made money bringing people to the line to see him. You can't. Of course, he didn't approve of it. It may have happened, but you can't blame him. And in a way, sooner or later, people who are in contact with the benefits will be sooner or later benefited. So what do you think? This lesson today clearly is telling us, do not be worried about other people. Mind your business. That has already been told by Jesus in another lesson in this book. And he's repeating to us. He's saying, guys, focus on your job. Focus on what you can do. So in the next 24 hours, How about if we practice this? Whenever we are overly concerned about family members, about colleagues at work, neighbors, about whomever, even sometimes people don't sleep because of the government of their country or because of an international crisis. Let us do what Chico used to do. Breathe in and out, pray. We pray and say, I trust in God's providence. Let me do my part. So that's our affirmation. I trust in the divine providence. Let me do my part. Once again, I trust, really trust the divine providence, and I do my part. Shall we, friends? That's our exercise for the next 24 hours. Okay? So, tomorrow, when we come back, here at Kardec Radio, we'll be studying another chapter, the redemptive journey. We're talking a lot about redemption. And what is redemption? Redemption is that feeling when you become anew. You let go of the past and you regenerate yourself. It's precisely what we are experiencing on earth now. Are you ready for this? So friends, let us do our homework and reaffirm to ourselves, I trust in the divine providence. Let me do my part. Shall we, friends? A big hug to you. Big hug to you. And until tomorrow, God willing, friends.